Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the launch of Montfort University's Festival of Teaching, titled The Challenge of Change, which is apt because we've seen a lot of changes lately. I'm Mark Charlton, Associate Director of Public Engagement. I'm also a DMU alumni, class of 1993, if any of you watching are old enough to remember how the university was back then. And I'm also a current PhD student here, so I very much know about the excellent teaching that we have at this university. Anyone hoping for a COVID-free conversation might be a little bit disappointed today, but we could at least try to avoid mentioning Brexit, but I offer no guarantees. But nevertheless, welcome to this event. When the pandemic hit and Leicester started its journey in becoming world lockdown champions, DMU was in the middle of celebrating its 150th birthday. And whilst we never truly celebrated this remarkable achievement, we did spend the year supporting our city. We shared our resource, we distributed our PPE, and we worked in food banks. We delivered medicines to those isolating, and we fast-tracked nurses to the NHS. We even lent staff to the hospitals, and our students were at the heart of how we responded to the pandemic. And in doing so, they gained excellent real-world learning experiences. So I'm incredibly and proud of what DMU's achieved during the pandemic, and I very much see today as a celebration of who we are as a university and our values as educators. Our incredible academics have supported all of these endeavours at the same time moving their courses online and maintaining their high standards of teaching and demonstrating what it means to be a TEF Gold teaching institution. Today, I'm very fortunate to welcome a panel of experts who will discuss what it takes to deliver teaching excellence and social impact during a pandemic, and to support the city to become stronger and resilient as lockdown eases and the recovery process begins. I have a great panel to unpack all this over the next hour and see where we need to go from here to support our students to get the best possible outcomes and make a positive contribution to our communities. So I'm delighted today to welcome Sir Peter Solsby, a DMU alumni and Mayor of Leicester, Glynis Wright, MBE, Head of Family Law at Nelson's Leicester, alumna and Chair of the Advisory Board for Business and Law at DMU, Professor Jackie Labby, Pro Vice Chancellor Academic, and two students today to give the student perspective. Like I said before, we put students at the heart of everything, so we really wanted the student voice here today, and I'm delighted to welcome Sana Nawaz and Thomas Carter. Each of my guests will give a short opening statement, introducing themselves and giving their perspectives on the role of the university during COVID-19, the current challenges and the hopes for the future. After that, we'll discuss some of the issues raised, and I should say, please post any questions in the comments section. There's a diversity of knowledge on this panel, so please feel free to use it and put your comments in the comments section, and we will read those out at the end. So firstly, I'd like to welcome Sir Peter Solsby.
Well, thank you, Mark, and thank you for inviting me along to this. You introduce yourself as being from the class of 93. I'm not sure it does give away my age. I was the class of 73, would you believe? But nonetheless, proudly at the time and since proudly associated with DMU. And I know we're talking essentially about the role of teaching today and the impact that can have, but perhaps if you just forgive me, I just want to reflect back, looking over that period, of the importance of DMU to Leicester, because it's not just about the amazing work that's been done over this last year and its engagement in the city during the period of COVID, but it's what DMU and the colleges from which it it grew, has contributed to the economy of the city over those many decades, 150 years in total, but over recent decades particularly. What it contributes by the vitality of the students that it brings to the city while they are students, and one of the things I'll touch on in a moment is the importance of retaining them afterwards as well. But they bring vitality to every aspect of the life of the city, and particularly to the cultural life of the city. We also get a tremendous amount out of the intellectual input of you and your colleagues working here, and often working with us. And that is what I think is very, very special about DMU. It's right there from the start, and it's been there over those many decades in the intervening period. Is its engagement in the life of the city. And it is something that's really quite special and possibly quite unique. Certainly, I talk to people who lead councils, people who are mayors in other places, and they talk about their universities. And one of them once described it as, with their university, they inhabited the same footprint but lived in a different universe. And that is not the case with DMU. It is quite the contrary. We are living in the same world, in the same city, and caring about the same city. And the engagement of DMU in the life of the city is something really quite remarkable. And, it is the case, of course, that there is more to be done to attract and retain graduates in the city, and to continue to develop the contribution that they make while they're students and in their subsequent, in my case, many years, which we hope they will want to have in the city. And I know that the work that we're doing together to increase the proportion of graduates that stay in the city is something that's important, and something I particularly want to plug as part of our discussions today. I think one of the most useful things that certainly happened to me, and that is a part of the culture of DMU, is the engagement of those students in the life of the city while they are students. Because they're not just passing through in that case, they are becoming a part of the city, and one hopes they will choose to make their futures in the city, and not just see it as a passing phase and move on from here. And I think it is vitally important that we continue to build on the work that we're doing together, to ensure that students have that opportunity for engagement while they are students, and that encouragement to build their futures and their lives here. Because I think together we can enable them to be a part of our city while they're students, and one hopes a significant proportion of them to build their future lives here. And I'm particularly delighted that not only am I an alumnus of the university, but so are two of my three daughters. And I think it's something that I hope others too will want to not just be a part of the city, but make the futures for themselves and their families as we go on. Obviously, it's been an incredibly challenging year for us. But I think that it is one that has shown DMU at its best, and despite the challenges of the city, has seen the city at its best. And I do enormously look forward to continuing to encourage people to do as I've never once regretted doing, having been a student at DMU, and that is to make their future here as well. So I welcome being with you today, and do look forward to the other contributors, and also, of course, most particularly to the questions that will come afterwards. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you, Peter. Glynis, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Mark, for inviting me to join in with this absolutely splendid live event today. Lovely to see you, Peter, and everybody else here, Tom and Sana and Jackie. As to my involvement with the university, I am also, like Peter, alumna. I don't go back as far. Maybe I look about the same age.
Oh.
But actually, I think I was around 2003, and that's because I came to Montfort University as a mature student. I think I was 40, and I made the meteoric decision to throw in my local government career to become a lawyer. And it was Montfort University that I firmly chose to be my university of choice. And I have to say, I did not regret that. because I went on to do incredibly well with De Montfort University. I found the lecturers amazing. They were hugely supportive of mature students as well as the younger students on the course. And it was all in all an absolutely fantastic experience. And I vowed at that time that what De Montfort University had given to me, I would seek to give back. And indeed, I have done so. I hope so anyway, because I am currently the chair of the advisory board of the faculties of business and law. And that is, I have to say, an energetic and feisty board of about 35 to 40 local businesses, local government reps, charitable organisations, and of course academics. And we are hoping to be able to influence the curriculum of the faculties of business and law. Now, what does that say about De Montfort University, that you would have so much involvement with local businesses? Everything, I would say. Because one of the things that I have found about the quality of teaching at De Montfort University is not only that it's of the highest standard, but also that it is relevant, that you keep flexible, that you reflect upon what the local community and the local economy needs. And the very fact that De Montfort University became so proactive during the pandemic, we were all knocked for six. But one of the first emails I got was from Mark, actually saying we're going to get together a group of discussions, and there were all these different task forces and meetings, and it was highly proactive. And what was it all about? It was all about working out how to help Leicester recover. Particularly because at that time, of course, we were labelled as Plague City, were we not? And we went into the second lockdown. And I was really impressed by just how proactive De Montfort University was. What I'd also like to say is, from the board meetings that I've had so far, it's really clear that already De Montfort University is reflecting upon the way in which it will teach, because now that we all know that we can teach and learn in this kind of a scenario, on Teams and Zooms and so on, it's very likely that at least part of that is going to continue. And the university, I note, is already reflecting upon the advantages that such teaching can give in terms of flexibility, but also the disadvantages, because of course the lack of socialization for students is a real issue. Personally, I loved being at university and having the sort of face-to-face interaction, but equally I can't deny that even for me as a businesswoman, I run family law for Nelson's, even for me as a businesswoman, it opens up opportunities for me to be able to connect with people in other parts of the country, and even to take their instructions that I wouldn't have been able to so readily before. So De Montfort University are already reflecting on that. And one of the things that has blown me away about De Montfort University is the level of impact studies they're also involved in on their research as well. And there are several impact studies which are focusing on obviously our local economy and what the university can do to help the local economy to recover. And I think that De Montfort University can be a great advocate for supporting local businesses, because what we really want to do is to get everyone thinking about how we can support local businesses when we come out of lockdown. Buy local, use local services. And I am sure, because De Montfort University is part of the beating heart of this community, that they're going to be able to carry that message for us too. So the last thing I wanted to say is we're going to be an economy that's probably going to be reflecting upon the impact of the pandemic for some time, both locally and nationally. What is quite clear, I know businesses that have gone to the wall tragically as a result of the pandemic. There are far too many. And so there will be people who are coming into the community who need to retrain, who need to look at their options, who've had their livelihoods taken away as a result of the pandemic. And De Montfort University can focus on lifelong learning for those individuals and helping them to get back into the economy and to become economically viable again. But certainly hang on to the students, because the students for De Montfort University are fantastic. And us businesses, we really want to keep you here in Leicester. Why would anyone want to go anywhere else? Leicester is the best place in the country, as far as I'm concerned. And I do know that a huge percentage of DMU students are in fact local students, which is something to celebrate. And that's all I have to say, Mark.
Thank you very much, Glynis. Now I'd like to invite Jackie, Professor Jackie Labby.
Thanks, Mark, and thank you so much, both Peter and Glynis, for those opening remarks, which I think show how importantly De Montfort sits within the city and how much we value that as well. I think as an institution, for us, many parts of our strengths come from the fact that we are not only an urban institution, but that we are an institution at the heart of Leicester, and the relationship that we feel with the city is one of the most important relationships that we have. I'm Pro-Vice Chancellor Academic at the university, and when I first came to the university in 2017, looked around, it was the day that the TEF Gold Award was announced, and it instantly showed to me the huge amount of pride that people across the university took in the value and the quality of the teaching that they gave to students, and that how much it was really part of the underpinning of the institution. And so I decided that the thing that I really wanted to be able to do was develop an event that allowed us to showcase to ourselves this quality of teaching, and to those who were interested in seeing it as well. And specifically that meant the residents, the Leicester community. So the Festival of Teaching was born in 2018, and we've been doing it almost every year since. Last year, the first day of the festival was meant to be March 23rd, and if we look back to last year, we can see that was the day everything changed, basically. So at last year's Festival of Teaching, we weren't even able to pivot it online. It just had to be essentially abandoned. But that meant that we wanted this year's festival to be even more visible to ourselves and to our city, because of the way in which COVID had that direct impact on last year's festival. The challenge of change has really never been more pertinent for us. I think we've had 12 months of almost constant change, much of it unwelcome, and a lot of it coming at us from all sides. I think together, the city and the university have been working really productively to counter that and to make sure that we can do the best we possibly can for our united communities. As Pro-Vice Chancellor Academic, I have overall responsibility for learning and teaching at the institution. And having said that, when I came in 2017, it was that great day of TEF Gold. There's never been a moment, I think, in the last 4 years where I haven't seen some example of the fantastic teaching that goes on across the institution. And there's been also so many moments where I've been really gratified to hear from our student body that they see that too. So it's not just ourselves thinking it, but that I think a great many of our students feel it as well, which is the most important thing. Our entire learning and teaching strategy is built around the idea that each and every one of our students is an individual with individual learning styles, individual learning needs, and that we really strive to embody that in the kind of teaching that we do, that we work with our students very closely in developing our curricula, in thinking about the way in which we assess our students. And last summer, as we were thinking about what this academic year was going to look like, one of the very first things that we did actually was survey our student body to see how the really swift move to online that we'd been forced into during the first lockdown, how that had felt for them, where we got it right, where we hadn't gotten it right, what we could do to try to do it better in the coming academic year. So our students have been a part of that conversation for the entire period. And as we've come into this academic year, there was a lot of work that went on to try to adapt our teaching, adapt the ways in which our assessments were developed, what was expected through our assessments, trying to make it so that as much as possible, we could kind of account for the impact of COVID. At the same time, we know that there have been instances where that hasn't exactly worked out in the way that was planned. And then when we hit the January lockdown, it was sort of tear it all up and throw it up in the air all over again. So what I really want to emphasize, I suppose, in these opening remarks is how much for us the teaching that we do isn't simply a kind of unidirectional thing. Experts stand up and deliver their wisdom to the grateful student body. That it is very much a mutual experience, I think, between our teachers and our students. In many cases, our students become our teachers as well. And over the course of this year, the challenges that we have faced have been in many ways ameliorated by exactly our students stepping up and saying, how about this way? How about that way? What about this? What about that? Which has enabled us, I think, by working together to try to make this year as an effective year as it could be, despite all the restrictions, despite all the problems. We know it's not always perfect. That is definitely the case. But each and every time a student tells us something that has gone wrong, that allows us to make it better and hopefully, not make that mistake again. We may make new ones, that's for sure, but not make the same ones. And I want to say how grateful we are to our student body for helping us, working with us so productively to make this year work. So I'll just end by saying again, the Festival of Teaching is all about celebrating and showcasing the excellent teaching that goes on across the institution to give us that moment of pride and of celebration, to realize that the immense amount of work that our staff put into their teaching is noticed and acknowledged and appreciated, but also really to bring and never forget that the teaching that we do is all about making sure that our students leave this university not only with a great subject knowledge in whatever subject they chose to study, but also ready for the world, ready for the world of work, ready for the world, ready to take on whatever comes at them. So I'm really pleased that I get to pass over to Tom and Sana, because they're the horse's mouth right there, and really looking forward to hearing what they have to say. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Jackie. And Sana?
Thank you, Jackie. I just wanted to come on here and talk about my point of view as a student and how my experience has been through this lockdown and this pandemic. I think the university has responded amazingly, particularly when the first lockdown happened. There was uncertainty everywhere, and although a lot of students were they were against the whole online class system, but I think the university has adapted so well, especially through student surveys and their own research and their own development. They've kind of adapted their online learning and teaching to the students to help students learn. And as Jackie said, every student has a different learning style, different way of learning and stuff. I think the university has been, and like lecturers have put in a lot of time to, you know, make weekly planners for each student on the step-by-step tasks on what to do, what to cover, the seminars and lectures. Particularly in the seminars, it's quite interactive. You don't feel like you're talking to a screen. You feel like, you know, you are there discussing with the whole class and the lecturer, which I think is really nice. And the lecturers have put in a lot of time, and they've given students a lot of availability on when they can offer their time to students that are struggling, which I think is really important. And particularly the tutors, personal tutors for each student. Mine has been very supportive, and my lecturers have been very understanding, because this pandemic has brought a lot of problems, different to each student, each individual. But lecturers and teachers have been so understanding with, you know, exam deadlines, extensions, and deferrals. And I think that's the most important thing. And particularly getting the student point of view on what we think about online learning. And even now, when they've started planning to get students back on track with the face-to-face teaching, I think the step-by-step guide is really nice. I had a look at it this morning, and I think it's definitely a really good way of starting our face-to-face learning. And yeah, that's all I'd like to say. Over to Tom.
Thank you, Sana. Can you just tell everyone what degree you're studying, please?
Oh, great. Accounting and finance. I'm in my second year.
Great, thank you. Over to you, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Firstly, for having me and Sana included today, because I think that, like we've mentioned, that student perspective is really, really important. So I'm Tom. I'm a second-year journalism student, and quite crucially, I'm also the course representative for my year and my degree, which means that I spent a lot of time, especially in the first lockdown, talking to other students about their fears and their concerns and potential worries. Admittedly, it was quite striking how in such an unprecedented learning environment and such a difficult kind of an instant switch to this online teaching, that we ended up in a situation where a lot of people actually came together. I think that's as much students as it is staff. And I think even on my course alone, with not loads of people and lots of students, we have seen through being a course representative, through explaining how we feel about certain things, we've seen genuine change, be it in the style of learning, be it in changes in software or how the teaching operates. And I think really that's just a microcosm of how the university has operated during this pandemic, in terms of being supportive for students, staff members helping people out, because we've all kind of, it sounds a bit cliche, dare I use one, but it is all, everybody, we're all in this together. I think not only did staff's or students' lives get disrupted massively, so did the staff members. They didn't want to be online and teaching through a screen, especially when you see the passion of the teachers and some of the staff members. They really, you feel like they live to be teaching and having these debates and things in lesson and in person. So I think that of anything, there was a mutual two-way kind of respect and appreciation for the difficulty everybody was facing. And I was in the heat of my exams. It's my first year exams. I think I had one the week after the lockdown was announced. And the kind of, I wouldn't say fear, but the fear of the unknown was really difficult to deal with. And I feel like while some students have quite rightly struggled with the transition, I feel as a result of DMU support and even with something like this allowing me to come here and give my perspective, I feel that DMU has made that transition and what has been a very difficult and unprecedented last year a really good experience and something that I feel I've benefited from, even though I have hardly been on campus. With all the things that we've really done well to, as students and staff as a cohesive unit. I think we've really pulled together, and it's been fantastic to see. So thank you for having me here today, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Tom, and congratulations on being the first person to use the phrase unprecedented. Spoken like a true future journalist.
I'd never heard. No one's ever said it throughout the last year. I thought just off the top of my head.
But yeah, so what I'd like to do is reflect on something that is of interest to all of you, I believe, because our students want to study well and get good jobs. I know that the Mayor's deeply engaged in a project with the university to keep graduates in Leicester. So I want to talk about that a little bit, because I think it's a really important aspect of this, particularly in, to quote Tom, these unprecedented times. In terms of, there's going to be a challenge around employability, and I just wondered how people felt about this, whether it was optimistic, whether you were optimistic or whether you were aware of the challenges or how you wanted to broach those challenges. So I'll start with Sana, how you're feeling about graduation.
Oh, so about graduation, I think it's definitely, my time has flew by in DMU. It wasn't my first choice of uni, but it's definitely the best choice that I have made. The course structure was one thing that really drew me to this university. And now that I'm nearing the end of my course, I'm definitely gonna miss it. And I think I've definitely learned a lot, even though the pandemic, it's been quite disturbing for a lot of students. But I still feel that I've made the most out of my second year, at least. So in terms of placements and internships, I've been looking for internships just before I graduate, which will be next year. And I think the staff at DMU, they've been really supportive, and also their links to small businesses in Leicester and out of Leicester has been really helpful for my application process. And this is definitely going to help me after I graduate. And DMU definitely gives you skills that you can use beyond your degree, not just during your learning years. And that's a very important and amazing thing to consider.
Thank you, Sana. And Tom, are you feeling confident about when you graduate and entering the employment market?
Admittedly, I think graduation is that. In the midst of these times, I think graduation is the one thing a lot of people are kind of forgetting. I think that not necessarily, I mean, I say, yeah, not necessarily on local level in terms of DMU support for graduates, but when you look at kind of national government and their response to the pandemic, I feel, and maybe it's because I am a student, that students have, especially kind of graduates or those going through that transition into the world of work, I feel like I've been forgotten in a way in a lot of the conversation. You know, because a lot of people, I obviously had to do exams online, but if there was people in my position last year that were third years that were literally graduating and coming into this world where they couldn't even leave their house. So I think for me, an important factor would be, while I feel comfortable and excited to graduate and get into the world of work and want to use my degree for good, I think that it'd be good to see on both the local and a national political level, a bit more kind of support, maybe even for it to just be publicized if it is there, so that students know that there is people that are, or like a body that is helping them through this really difficult transition, because it's difficult in an economy at the best of times, but in times such as these where jobs are so scarce, and Glynis was talking about the kind of difficult and volatile business climate, I think that if there are those systems in place and policies in place to help us as we graduate, then if they are there or are going to be there, then they should be publicized and I think would be of great use to student graduates.
Thank you, Tom. I think that's probably a good moment to pick on Peter and see what plans structurally the city are putting in place to support our young people into work.
Yeah, I think just before I talk about that, I mean, I just do want to come back on what I was saying in my introduction, that I think, you know, one of the important things in terms of encouraging graduates to make their futures in Leicester is actually engaging them in the life of the city while they're students. You know, and letting them know that the life of the city is not just the nightlife of the city. You know, and you know, and I think, you know, for many, you know, that is actually, you know, key to you know, them feeling that they've got some engagement in the city and they could make their future here. But I think what we've been able to do together with DMU is to take a number of initiatives that open up to students the opportunities that there are. We're looking, for example, you know, to set up I think what's been described as the Leicester Graduate Jobs Board, which you know, will enable graduate jobs to be identified in one place and reviewed by students who are, you know, who are looking for it, for, you know, for the opportunities, and also. I know we've been working together to look at ways in which we can give an engagement of students in the work places of Leicester while they are students, through internships and you know, and such opportunities. And I think as well, certainly the City Council. But I hope it's something that we can engage more large employers in. We're looking to continue to increase the number of graduate officer posts that we create to enable people to get that crucial early opportunity to engage with, you know, potential long-term employers as graduates, and to get the experience that they need, and hopefully to get a flavour of what is on offer here in Leicester that will enable them to commit for a longer term to those employers. So there's lots of things to be done. A long way to go yet, because, you know, frankly, we do not yet keep enough of those graduates in the city. And it is all of those things I've talked about, and it's also about making sure that the city's economy has got opportunities for graduates. I'll just mention one particularly one that I'm incredibly proud of, is the fact that we've got IBM to come to Leicester. You know, I mean, it wasn't so long ago that people who had the sorts of skills that IBM needed felt that they had no need. You know, that if they wanted to pursue their career, they needed to go, well, London, Birmingham, but it wasn't in Leicester. And it's, I think, down to us, you know, to make sure that we're growing those parts of the economy that enable people to use their skills locally without having to go down the road to London.
Thank you, Peter. And I know employability is something you're very passionate about, Jackie, so I might ask you to respond to that.
Thanks. Yes, I mean, when we think about all the different ways in which students become employable, one of the biggest ways, I think, is assisting students to, in a way, think themselves into the mindset of being employable. And partly that is through the expertise they gain in their subject. Partly it is through things like work placements, which are so valuable and which in many ways the city is so supportive on, ways to find, give us opportunities, to help us find opportunities for our students. But a lot of it is also about the kinds of things that students do that in a way wrap around their study. So for instance, the kind of volunteering opportunities that we have, Mark, that you know about so well, that take students into the city to do things that they otherwise would not have had an opportunity to do, to learn about interaction with a wide variety of people, to become independent in that kind of way, to learn about personal agency, to work with other students and to get that sense of teamwork and of, you might even call it project management in that kind of way. There's so many ways in which the kinds of things that I think we offer as an institution do come together to give our students that sense of what it means to be working in a world of work. I mean, like Peter, we would love students to stick around Leicester. And the more that Leicester itself develops and the more that we can do in that kind of mutual working together to support that, all the better. Leicester as a city is so interesting to live in. You know, it has so much diversity, so much of interest, so much that is unusual, that the living part of it is, I think, always already an attraction. But then it's that other part of it as well that can help students to stick around once they're no longer students. I think I would be remiss if I didn't just remind ourselves that our Careers and Employability Service did just recently win an award as the best university careers and employability service at the National Undergraduate Employability Awards. And what that suggests for us as well is that the services that we put in place to help support students to think about, well, you know, I'm learning journalism or I'm studying accounting and finance. What are the next steps going to be? You know, whatever the subject or the topic of study might be, we've got a service that is set up entirely to help students to, as I said, think their way into that sense of being an employable graduate as well. So it's absolutely fundamental to the academic study that we offer.
Thank you, Jackie. And Glynis, as a local employer and businesswoman, I wondered if you might be able to give some of our undergraduates the types of things that you're looking for as an employer.
Well, there's a couple of things I want to say. I will absolutely get to that. The first thing is that students should not overlook the possibility of business, because we're talking about employment here, aren't we? But actually, Leicester is a hugely entrepreneurial city. I know this, I've lived here since I was 18, and I'm from Essex, but I came to Leicester when I was 18, and I've stuck here ever since because it's fantastic. And then I became a businesswoman when I left local government. And I felt that Leicester was incredibly fertile soil for running a business. Lots and lots of graduates need to think about the possibilities that business can offer to them, you know, even forming their own micro businesses or reaching out to business people like myself and others. I've actually just sold my business to Nelson, so I'm actually an employee now for Nelson Solicitors, fantastic employer. But the fact is that there are all sorts of business people out there who would give their time to students who might have business ideas. And can I just say, looking now at employers, this is definitely a time for students not to be shy. Okay, there's a certain solidarity in Leicester at the moment that I've felt, a solidarity that we've all got to work together to get past this. And I certainly think that employers and businesses alike are wanting to give opportunities to graduates and students right now, knowing that there are such challenges out there. I mean, certainly Nelson's, for example, we're participating in an initiative with Montfort University that's been coordinated by Eileen Richards, the president of the East Midlands Chambers of Commerce, to bring more students into our workplaces. Okay, so there has never been a better time for you not to be shy and to approach employers. Okay, honestly, really research the kinds of employers that you think may be interested, and approach them. I can't tell you how many times I get approached, and there are students into Montfort University who've linked up with me on LinkedIn. They've got work experience through it just by approaching me. Or there was a lady who put something on LinkedIn the other day saying, I met Glynis at an event. I went up and spoke to her, and from that I got work experience with her. It's been great. You know, you really need to take that opportunity, and you will find employers receptive right now, in my view. But as to what we're looking for, I think that these odd times that we've all faced is actually an opportunity for students, because you're coming through your learning and you're having to be very adaptable and very flexible. Okay, well, employers are having to adapt as well, and you're the new shoots, you're the future. So it's a great time to be coming in with fresh ideas for employers too. Think about what you might be able to offer to that employer, what experiences you can bring. Because one of the things that I love when I do interview students and graduates is when they can offer me something that's more holistic, if you like, not just their qualifications, because of course that's important. It always is what grades you get. Nobody's ever going to suggest that's not important. But when they can, I mean, for example, if Tom and Sana were in front of me in an interview, and they said, well, actually, we were on a panel for the Festival of Teaching and we spoke about our experiences. And I would have been blown away by that, because that shows initiative, doesn't it? So the more well-rounded that students can be, the more they have to offer, which is beyond just the qualifications, the more they can say they engage in the broader community, the more attractive they are to employers, in my view. I hope that's helpful anyway.
I think it's really helpful, and I'm just worrying about your email inbox now. Every student in the university.
And my LinkedIn is going to go mad, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Some brilliant advice there. I'm going to move on to the questions, actually, because Amberelle has put a really good question in the chat, and if you want to put a question in the chat, please feel free to do so. But this seems like quite an interesting question for you all. Anne would like to ask each panelist to share one learning point from the past year which will influence their lives in the future. I think I'm going to start with Jackie, as it's learning's your game.
Right. Gosh, just one. I think that this is something that became apparent across the whole sector, really, not even just in higher education, but across the educational sector. I think we have an assumption that students, at least students who are in the kind of traditional student age, are digital natives, utterly comfortable with the online world, completely able to navigate anything to do with the net, all that kind of thing. What we found when we had to throw everything online is really how untrue that was. Not that students didn't know how to do things, but that they knew how to do the things they knew how to do very well. But that didn't necessarily include, for instance, having instant access to the right kind of machine, or having exactly the right kind of broadband at home, or any of that kind of thing. And we found, really to our dismay, that there were a huge number of students who one of the biggest advantages of being at university and being able to come physically to university was being able to make use of, for instance, the Wi-Fi that is there on campus, or the computer labs that we have, because they didn't have access to their own machines. So I think that the biggest learning point for me from the last year is not to assume, not to correlate, for instance, age with knowledge in that same kind of way, and also definitely not to assume that something like access to machinery, access to technology, access to Wi-Fi and that kind of thing is the same across the board. It's something I think that higher education as a whole has had to understand. And when we're in this kind of world where we're doing everything, so many things through a portal, if we are going to offer teaching to our students that requires them to be able to have access to something by which to receive the teaching and to join into the teaching, it's a real responsibility of the institution to ensure that students can do that. So in terms of things like student support, it absolutely, and I think forevermore, will have to include a real understanding of what students what students can bring to it, but also what they need and what we need to do to make sure that the teaching we offer is accessible.
Thank you, Jackie. And Sana, what do you think? What's your one learning point from the last year that you'd like to share?
So I actually I attended a small work experience thing through DMU. It was with Bright Network, and I think they taught me something really important. That was about networking and confidence, and how important it is to network and put yourself out there with people, employers, because that's how you make the contacts. That's how you find out about opportunities available to you, and you should always have the confidence of approaching employers, applying for these jobs, internships. On LinkedIn, I was told to make a LinkedIn profile. Something I was completely new to that, but it's been so nice. I've made a lot of connections, and there's so many opportunities on there from students, employers. You can connect with other students and ask them about their experiences, and I think that's definitely something I'm going to be taking further with me. Is to really put myself out there and making connections and building a network so I can really see the opportunities available to me and, ask people for advice, ask employers for advice and business opportunities in particular. So that's something I would recommend for other students as well at DMU. Is to really increase networking and build your confidence, because that is what employers do look for, and it really does make you stand out as a person.
That's great advice, Anna. It's just making me think that you've done such a great job networking at a time when we haven't really been allowed to network at all. You've really redoubled your efforts. Yeah. Tom, what's your learning point from the past year?
I think I'm similar to kind of Jackie in trying to pinpoint one. It's really difficult when you look across everything that's happened. But I think, and I like to think that it's not just necessarily personal to me, but everybody in their own way will be able to understand this point. I think we've all kind of found out how resourceful we are, or how resourceful we can be. I think that it takes things like COVID or things such as such crazy circumstances to be imposed for us to kind of really see what we're made of. To the thought of learning online and pretty much doing a degree especially about news writing in Leicester when I'm back home in Essex, that would have sounded crazy to me at the start of 2020. But all of a sudden, we as humans, we naturally become more resourceful, and we find that extra layer of resolve because we simply have to. And I found myself, I think, if anything, thinking more about my assessments. I would also say putting more work into my degree, because I would have already put a lot of work into it. But in terms of looking for stories and interviewing people as part of my journalism course, I found myself through the internet talking to people in Holland, contacting and being bold and talking to Nigel Pearson, who was the former Leicester City football manager. And part of me thinks that without the circumstances such as the pandemic and it forcing us to think differently and be a bit more lateral in our approach, would that have happened? So I think definitely for me, the one learning point is that opportunity is there, as Sana was saying, but it's about being resourceful to find that opportunity within yourself.
Well done with getting an interview with Nigel Pearson, Tom. I think journalists struggle with that. when
he didn't call me an ostrich, thank God. So
yeah. Peter, same question to you.
Take that one off.
I think, but probably, it's flaming obvious. It is going to be different afterwards. We're not just going to go back to the way things were, and lots of things have changed. And I hope that we'll get on to perhaps, what it might mean more generally for the city, in particular the city centre. Perhaps an answer to another question that I think I've spotted, coming our way in a few minutes. But I think the most obvious thing is that the extent to which we are able to use technology and the IT that we're using today, and has been accelerated so enormously over the last year. We're not going to go back from that, and it has, I think, enormous implications for what it is to be what they tend to brand as smart cities. Because I think that's going to need to be redefined, and it is about the infrastructure, it is about the hardware, it's about the software, but it's also about the skills. And I come to really the point that Jackie made, that that shouldn't be assumed that even though we have all been tested about this year and got used to using some of the software, that we've yet, I think, explored its full potential. And I think that the use of the technology and the use of the what it is to be a smart city is something that I think we, with the university, can look at what is necessary to ensure that it is not just a different world, but one where we're using things even more effectively. And certainly it is the case. This sort of discussion we're having today does enable engagement of more people than might have been the case if it was being held, in a physical place. And I think that's quite an important difference. And I think using the new technology, using hybrids of actual physical presence and new technology give tremendous opportunities for us. And it is something where I think DMU is very well placed to work with the rest of the city to help us get the best out of.
Thank you, Peter. And finally, Glynis.
Yeah, I mean, there are just so many learnings that one has had. I mean, on a personal level, like everybody, I've got a real focus on what's important in life. And that isn't always about the things that you thought were important in life. It comes down to the basics, doesn't it? Your family, who you love, spending time with them. Putting that obvious comment aside, because I think that's been a reflection for all of us. One of the things that has really warmed my heart is seeing how the city reacted to this dreadful thing in terms of the professional, the academic and business communities coming together. I mentioned it earlier, this solidarity, which was more than the competition we usually feel with each other. Because, of course, we're all trying to get on in life, and we're all, whether we're businesses or whatever, we're all trying to ensure that we stay in business and we get the footfall in. But what I found, particularly as president of Leicestershire Law Society, law firms who would normally be competing with each other came together to work out how we could support each other, because things were so incredibly difficult. Everyone was in a complete nosedive. And as president, I was trying to put on all of this free training to law firms about how they could come out of the pandemic and cope with the challenges. Competition became secondary to that. And I would like to think that we could continue that solidarity in our community that I have felt so strongly throughout the pandemic, and we can actually make Leicester stronger as a result of that and keep those relationships vibrant, because a lot of footfall has been done out of necessity. When it ceases to be a necessity, can we keep that impetus going? I see the university as absolutely key to that, the students as key to that, of course people like Peter as absolutely key to that, and people like myself as in the professional sector. And that's one of the big learnings that I've had, is it really is possible to have solidarity over competition when it most is needed.
Thank you, Glynis. And just moving on, I'm aware of the time, but we've got a really good question from Bobby Uppel asking what steps we can take to start the process of the regeneration of the High Street. So I think it's an obvious one for Peter, but I'm also quite interested in the student perspective on this. So I'll go to Peter first.
Yeah, I mean, I think just focus on the High Street. I mean, I was touching on it really in the last answer. I mean, the city and our ways of working in the city are going to change, and probably our ways of shopping are going to change, perhaps very dramatically, and change to online shopping, and the change that will prompt in the pattern of retailing in the city is at the heart of this. But it also is probably the case that people's ways of working will change as well.
I think I might have lost the mayor there. Yeah, that looks that way. So while Peter hopefully comes back, I just like to ask Tom, first Tom and then Sana, how you see the evolution of the high street in future.
Yeah, I think what's an important factor, especially with students and their relation and subsequent kind of contribution to the high street, is that not only are we seen as, you know, customers and consumers in normal times. I think what's quite crucial is that a lot of student jobs are with high street retailers. They're in like the High Cross shopping centre, for example, in the city centre. Many student jobs working in bars and restaurants and things. So I think that not only are students crucial by getting us back to campus, not only are we crucial in the spending of money on the high street and kind of getting the economy going that way, we're also crucial in essence being employed by these high street shops. They'll need the staff to deal with the customers that will be increasing. It would, you know, obviously it's an inevitable downturn, as you say, potentially, but I see it as short term. And by getting students back onto campus, by getting people back into the city, I think that's the ultimate goal, to kind of regenerate the high street, especially seeing how essential it's been during the pandemic when supermarkets, things were the only thing open. So I think that, yeah, getting students back to their jobs in high street places and potentially creating more opportunity for students with part-time work. Maybe that's something that I'm sure DMU does help with a lot already. So that could be really good to remobilize the economy that, of course, has suffered.
Thank you. And Sana, what do you think?
Well, during the because I'm a girl, I've just been doing a lot of shopping during the pandemic, and it's been mostly online. That hasn't stopped, and I think one way that DMU could, or Leicester can get back on track is developing better online shopping for students and people, as well as in store. Changing their styles, maybe bringing in new fashion styles, new outfits, adjusting to the seasons, and definitely rehiring students that have lost their jobs and getting those students back into work, not just for work purposes, but experience and really getting the economy going. So those things can definitely help the high street get back on track.
Thank you. And Jackie, I know you feel passionate about this as well.
Well, it's actually responding to something that Sana just said. We've got so many talented students at this university, so many of whom are learning subjects that will be absolutely crucial to the regeneration of the high street in terms of things like fashion or business or computing or media/journalism. I think there are probably some really interesting ways we can do even more to hook up our students in different parts of the city's economy in terms of things like supporting live projects, making sure that some of the regeneration can actually factor actively into the students' learning and thereby start to create that relationship that will then possibly also have the beneficial impact of keeping the students, once they're graduates, in the city to carry on with some of the things that they themselves have contributed to creating.
Thank you. And I've just seen the time. We've literally got 2 minutes left. So that hour just flew by. And as I said at the start, I wanted it to be a celebration of teaching at the university. And I feel like we've covered a lot of ground in terms of getting close to that at least. And I'd like to thank our guests. Obviously, we've lost the mayor, but I'm very grateful for his participation. He's now feeling the digital divide, unfortunately, but I'm very grateful for his participation. As here he is. I was just hi Peter. I was just thanking you for your participation in this. And
I'm sorry about that. I've had to join you on my mobile phone.
Well, thank you for coming back. So thank you to Guinness Wright BE, to our two students, Sana and Tom, and also our Pro Vice Chancellor, Jackie Labby. It's been a fantastic start to the Festival of Teaching. Please, there are lots of really interesting events and lots of diverse activities to get involved in. They're all online. If you go to the events page on the Montfort University website, you will find a list of things that you can participate in over the coming 4 weeks. So thank you to everyone for participating. Thank you to those who submitted those excellent questions, and thank you again to our brilliant panel. And hopefully have a great festival of teaching. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. It's great seeing you.
Cheers.